Demons on the moon. Is it a possibility? I do believe this is the case. When you know that one demon is assigned to every human, and one guardian angel spirit is also assigned to every human, you then come to the conclusion that the astronauts that went to the moon each had two spirits following them the entire distance. Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, and so did his two spirits. The demon spirit that follows him, the familiar spirit, it is also called, and the guardian spirit. The yin and yang, literal conscious entities follow us from birth to death. I personally know this to be the case. So wherever a human goes, a demon on one shoulder, an angel on the other shoulder will follow. Not figuratively, but literally. I've had first-hand contact with demons, and I know if I ever went into a space station in outer space, that the spirits that follow me would have no choice. They would also go with. I don't know if any of the astronauts witnessed UFO activity. Many of them deny they did. Some of them claim they see unusual things outside the window, here and there. It's possible some of these UFO sightings, if they happened, perhaps they suppressed it because NASA said, don't talk about UFOs, but it's in the realm of possibility that these demons that followed them got a little bored and they wanted to play some games. Maybe they appeared as a ball of light outside of the module. Whatever the case, it's a real possibility when you come in first-hand contact with a spirit. The first time it happened to me, to an extreme extent, negative-wise, a negative entity, a demon, was in 2010. But this video is about demons on the moon, demons following astronauts, not only to the moon, but also the International Space Station. I'm John Razimus. I thank you for watching. Just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's not important. The air we breathe, it's pretty important. Can't see it. You can see when it sways the branches of a tree, but you really can't see it. You can see when it's carrying clouds and smog. So you can see it indirectly. Similarly, I see spirits indirectly. I don't optically see them. I'm glad I cannot. It would freak the freaking crap out of me if I could see spirits. I see dead people. I do not, luckily. So not everything that is invisible is non-existent. Some invisible things are just as real as the air we breathe. Spirits are real. I have first-hand contact with spirits. Not everything that's invisible is important. I'm sure there's some worthless dark matter out there, but we don't know that. I'm sure there is some very important dark matter networking and webbing, holding things together. And if that dark matter didn't exist, maybe we'd be flying in outer space somewhere. That being said, Crystal Pepsi is now in gas stations around the nation, and it's invisible to a certain extent, right? Let's try some. Let's do a review of the new version, or the same version. We shall see. I don't know. Crystal Pepsi. Kind of hard to open it while I'm holding a camera, but last time I tried this, I noticed a few ingredients. It was a little bit different. Obviously, the food coloring, whatever they use to color it, is removed from the recipe. And if that coloring does change the flavor even slightly, it is noticeable. But I'll do a taste test right now. Wow. The aftertaste is gone. So that's what I noticed last time, but now it's even more apparent. The aftertaste is gone. So it's a better product, slightly. If you like Pepsi, I'll just drink it while I talk. Invisible things are important. I'm not necessarily saying this is important. I prefer Coca-Cola. Drink Coca-Cola. But for novelty's sake, I remember when this came out for the first time. Try Crystal Pepsi, but I guess both rot your teeth. Don't forget to brush your teeth, kids. Elon Musk. Doobing it up. Elon clearly did not inhale on the Joe Rogan podcast. He went, immediately blew all of the smoke out. So he did cave to peer pressure, but at the same time, I think he did it to try to be trendy and cool. I mean, I don't want to talk about Elon Musk too much, but I did say on Twitter how I do believe billionaires are surrounded by spirits, speaking of invisible things, helping them. I mean, I know there are spirits that hinder our progress, hinder us from becoming millionaires. There are a good number of people out there that have million-dollar ideas, try to implement them and fail miserably. I actually had an idea for this video. Oh, the moon. That's why I'm wearing this moon stuff. I think we should return to the moon. I think we should get back to the moon. You know, Thomas Sheridan, you probably have seen his channels. He talked about what a mystical experience it must have been for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, the first and second human beings to set foot on a foreign planet, on a foreign body. And let's face it, the moon is basically a planet. I've heard scientifically inclined individuals call our little blue planet here a double planet, because we have a planet revolving around us. In my opinion, if I was some top guy at NASA, I would say, you know what? If gravity is strong enough to form a celestial body into a perfect sphere, or even just a near perfect sphere, relatively a sphere, more than a spheroid, but an actual sphere like the moon, then it should technically be classified as a planet, even if it is a satellite. But Thomas Sheridan, great video, check it out. I tweeted about it. Check out my Twitter, @Rasmus. He said that a lot of the skeptics that believe it didn't land on the moon point out trivial things here and there. And one of those things is the press conference, where the 3 astronauts gave that press conference after the quarantine. Remember, they were quarantined for a good month, just in case there is some alien radiation or alien substances on the moon that could contaminate the Earth. They were in quarantine for a good 30 days, what I remember. And there's even a photograph of Nixon, you know, talking to them through the glass, the quarantine glass. So it's not like the press conference was exactly one day after they landed. They landed in the ocean. They were dredged out of the ocean. They were immediately in quarantine. And then they gave this press conference. And who knows what state of mind they were in, but they did seem to be kind of drained. And they were very calm and somber. They're almost at a funeral, giving a eulogy. Most definitely, they were not excited about that press conference. And the people claiming we never landed on the moon, which I completely 100% disagree with, say that because they're talking like it's a eulogy, because they look so depressed, clearly they're lying, and that's why they're depressed, right? Well, let me give you some background on the first man to land on the moon, Neil Armstrong, a hero of mine, an amazing individual, the top pilot of his class. He flew that lunar lander on Earth many times. It actually crashed, and he almost died. He had to escape with an ejection seat at the last second. So he almost died being the first person to expertly figure out how to navigate this lunar lander, already being an amazing ace pilot with medals, proving he knew what he was doing. So clearly, they wouldn't have put him through such rigorous things as training the lunar lander. On the moon, it was a lot easier to navigate because of the lack of gravity. The thing was designed for the lack of gravity. That's why it didn't work so well testing it on Earth. I'm sure they had to make some calculations on the thrusters. But Neil Armstrong, the thing about Neil Armstrong, if you notice, before he passed away, rest in peace, he was very shy. Rarely ever gave interviews for 30 years straight. Was a recluse, was in his house, pretty much despised or just had social anxiety concerning the media and cameras and lights in his face. So put yourself in Neil Armstrong's shoes. Very anxiety of the outdoors, of people and places, yet an ace pilot who they picked based on his performance and merits. He deserved to be picked as an astronaut and the first man to land on the moon. People say it's because he was a Mason. Masons are all over the place. It's a fraternity, and I doubt they picked him because of that. Or maybe that did put him over. You know, most definitely, if NASA has a fraternity mindset, they might pick one of their own rather than an outsider. And if being a Mason puts them over the edge, I'm not a Mason, but you can definitely see here and there it does help out with fellow Masons, just helping each other out. I don't think it's a vast conspiracy. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I think most definitely we did land on the moon. But Neil Armstrong was a recluse in his later years, even right after he got back off the moon. He was forced to do that press conference, reluctantly did that press conference, hated the public in the spotlight. Whereas Buzz Aldrin, you see him like a celebrity. Now, in his later years, he's probably staying indoors these days. He has a book about Mars. I'm going to get that book, Mission to Mars. And Buzz is a lot more friendly to the camera and to the media. So his personality is way different. But even Buzz was somber during that press conference, probably because Neil set the tone and the other two astronauts took that stance and pace. Neil was the leader of the wolf pack, and Buzz and the other guy, I apologize, can't remember the other guy's name. He was the pilot. He was the guy in the lunar module orbiting the moon, never got to land on the moon. It must have been amazing, just seeing the moon from such a close distance, orbiting it over and over. Very cool. I really like that Thomas Sheridan video though, where Thomas Sheridan says, imagine you're the first man to walk on the moon. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. From a spiritual perspective, in my opinion, there's going to be two spirits following each astronaut. So not only did 3 astronauts go to the moon in a tin can, but according to my personal viewpoint, spiritually speaking, there's a demon and a guardian angel traveling with each astronaut. So we're talking, 3 humans and 6 spirits went with them. And very few people consider that a possibility. Very few people talk about that. No one else has ever mentioned that. Thomas Sheridan talked about how they slept in the lunar lander overnight, and they woke up saying, wow, I'm on the moon. And they must have had amazing dreams, most definitely. That's a very cool insight. They probably did have some trippy experiences from that perspective. But what no one talks about is 6 spirits followed them based on how the universe works. 2 spirits are following you at all times, a good one and a bad one. Just the yin and yang principle of the opposites in the universe. I talked about this. I asked Richard Garriott, a video game developer of the Ultima series. He went to the International Space Station not long ago, a couple years ago. He was up there for a couple weeks. The most amazing experience of his life. His dad was an astronaut, so he always wanted to be in the same position as his dad. He recreated some of his dad's experiments while on the International Space Station. So a second-generation human being to have gone to the International Space Station. I believe the very first second generation ever. And it was a huge experience for him. And I asked Richard Garriott, I met him once. I wanted to ask him this question in person based on my poltergeist experiences in the past. And I never did because I forgot. I was there just to, as an Ultima Dragon of the UDIC at Disneyland at a Dragons convention, the very first ever. And he gave his talks, and then he talked and got pictures and signed his autograph. And he's a very nice guy in person. And I got a picture with him. And I forgot to ask him the question because he was very important to me. I forgot. So I tweeted him, and he responded. Richard Garriott responded to my tweet. I asked Richard Garriott, knowing that spirits follow people, knowing there's a demon on one shoulder, an angel on the other shoulder, not figuratively, literally. I know this to be a personal fact, but personal facts are hard to prove. Take it with a grain of salt if you don't want to believe it, because it's very unbelievable, or it's very easy to disbelieve is what I mean to say. I personally know it to be a fact. Anyway, these spirits are under certain guidelines. They can't show themselves, ever. The demon breaks the rules sometimes, though. Whereas the angel never breaks the rules. Angels are as obedient to their chain of command as it gets, to a T. They couldn't break the rules even if they wanted to. I asked Richard Garriott on Twitter. I said, hey, when you went up to the International Space Station, I want to ask you this question. Did you notice any creaks or bangs or unusual sounds? Sounds that I attribute to poltergeist activity that I've experienced many times firsthand. Knowing that a demon is following him and a guardian angel and everyone else on the space station. And Richard Garriott said, yes, an unusual sound I heard. It sounded like snow falling on the outside of the International Space Station. It sounded like snow. Very unusual sound. He said he reported it to the other astronauts on the International Space Station. And he said, what is this unusual sound outside? It's clearly not meteorites. What is it? And they said, it's nothing, no big deal. We hear that all the time. And he's like, okay. And so he said they didn't report it. They didn't write it down. They didn't even care. But in my personal opinion, believe me, disbelieve me, I think it's a possibility that was one or more of the demons assigned to one or more of those astronauts in the International Space Station crawling outside. Demons don't need oxygen to live. They can crawl outside the International Space Station. They can walk straight through the walls. But they're assigned to the humans, so they can't really leave the vicinity. They can't fly off to Saturn. They can't fly off to the moon or straight into the sun. They are bound by needing to be within a certain vicinity of us. So it's not literally on your shoulder. I don't know what the vicinity is, but if they're assigned to you, they have to keep a certain distance at all times from birth to death, both the demon and the guardian angel. But because they're in another dimension, saying 10 feet is probably not how it works. It's more being able to hear and see. How they hear and see might vary because they're in another dimension, looking down. But at the same time, the dimensions are stacked. And in my opinion, it's possible that poltergeist activity happens on the International Space Station because a demon assigned to every human was messing around on the outside, trying to freak people out. Perhaps it's been doing it for years, concerning maybe a repeating, you know what I mean? An astronaut goes up, an astronaut goes down. Maybe the demons are like, hey, we play this game, we scratch the outside. They think it's like, sounds like snow falling on the outside walls of the metal station, and it's hilarious. Continue up, continue to do that. I would like to ask the same question to that astronaut who broke the record and was on the International Space Station for a year straight. His bones and his muscle mass clearly changed after a year, and actually I believe he had a twin, and so they judged his muscle mass and bones with his identical twin brother. That's why he was chosen for the experiment. Poltergeist activity follows you. Now, it follows me. At the same time, it doesn't show itself to too many people. 99% of humans will never experience poltergeist activity. Consider yourself lucky. I know it to be real. I know it to be authentic and legit. There's a guy named Roger Morneau, rest in peace. He experienced it for 6 months after he left a bad organization. He experienced it for 6 months, poltergeist activity. Objects levitating, being picked up off the walls, a painting. A lamp being picked up off the ground. Books being knocked out of his hands. And Carl Jung, the psychologist, psychiatrist, friend of Sigmund Freud, he experienced poltergeist activity too. And he tried to rationalize it away. I think Carl Jung was a prototype, was a beta test for negative entities, demons, that have the ability to poltergeist, move objects, to see what the human psyche, and more specifically, what the human psychologist, the human skeptic, rational thinker, psychiatrist how they would perceive poltergeist activity. And Carl Jung fell right into the trap, rationalized it away as part of his mind. I disagree with Carl Jung 100%. It wasn't part of his mind. Rest in peace, Carl Jung, but he was wrong. He was so entrenched in the Freudian way of thinking, of just rationalizing everything you see and observe as coming from your mind, that he couldn't even grasp the concept of it being an external intelligent entity, which it was. External intelligent entities, they bother me on a regular basis ever since 2011. The major harassment, the major demonic oppression is over, but the revolving door continues to an extent. A creak on the wall of a house doesn't mean it's necessarily poltergeist activity, but it doesn't mean it's not. Most likely it's not going to be. But a full-blown knock, when you know there's no one there, nothing there. In my instance, in my case, full-blown poltergeist activity. So not everything you see on the show Ghost Adventures is fake. Some of it's real. I've experienced a lot of what they've experienced, and in 2011, I would say to an extreme degree, I experienced a condensed, super, ultra, souped up, on steroids version of what they experienced in a 6-month period of time. And all I have to show for it is what I know. So like Carl Jung, I will write books on the subject, but unlike Carl Jung, I will come to a different conclusion, as I already have. No one can convince me it wasn't an intelligent external entity, because I was a roommate with the thing. I was a roommate with it for 6 months. When you have a roommate for 6 months, you do learn a lot about that roommate. Like, he steals your mustard, he will steal your corn dogs, and claim that you said, "Oh, take whatever you want, dude." And then you're like, "I didn't say that, the other roommate said that." And he's like, "Oh yeah, dude, sorry." And then you write in the box, in the inside of the corn dog box, you say, "This is mine, you know. Please don't take my corn dogs." And then the other roommate says, "Hey man, what's with the sign? Don't take my corn dogs." And I'm like, "How'd you know that sign was there?" So that's just an example, first-hand experience, something like that happened to me, no big deal. But as far as spiritual roommates, I had a legit spirit roommate. And it acted like a wild monkey, playing with stuff and knocking stuff over, almost with no rhyme or reason. But its rhyme and reason was more intelligent than it played on to be. Its rhyme and its reason was to demonically oppress and harass and terrorize me. So one thing I did to piss it off to an extreme degree, this will piss off demons more than anything, is when they try to scare you and you're not scared anymore, you're like, eh, that pisses them off really bad. We're talking a thing knocked over a bottle, knocked over a box, knock over other things, sat on things, knocked over other things, walked on a Walmart bag, knocked over other things, played with things, and your response is wearing headphones going, eh, and then going back to what you're doing. It definitely pissed it off. Pissed it off pretty bad. I think my ignoring it for 3 months in a row is the reason why it jumped on top of me and grabbed my neck and my throat and my mouth, because I ignored it for 3 months straight. And I did tell it to leave after that, and it did leave, and it came back 1 hour later. And these experiences are firsthand. They're real. It's not from a book. I didn't read about it. I'm not a fan of horror movies. I watch occasionally here and there the milder ones. I don't like the really, really bad ones. I'm not a fan of the gruesome ones. The 80s ones that are really corny are pretty funny. But the modern ones, I've never watched a single Saw movie. I haven't seen a single one. So the really, really scary modern ones that are designed to frighten the heck out of you, not a fan. So I hope we return to the moon, you know? I want to go back to the moon. I forgot to mention my dad worked as a draftsman for NASA, was contracted, worked for NASA as a draftsman on the lunar modules, on the rockets that shot those modules into outer space. My dad is an engineer, has a master's in electronical engineering and mechanical engineering. He has 2 masters, a master in both of those, dealing with rockets, satellites, lunar modules. It happened. We landed on the moon. The Japanese satellite that orbits the moon has taken photos of the landing sites. Definitively, we landed on the moon, period. And I hope we go back. I hope they build a base on the moon. And on that base, there will be knocks and creaks and pings and dings. Little things like that. And it'll be poltergeist demons that followed the lucky few that live in that first lunar village. Until next time, I thank you for watching. This has been John Rasmus, Mysterialis Ghost Investigation. Ghosts are real. They walk through me on a regular basis. It's kind of freaky now. I've never heard anyone else say walk through. See, I have the perceptive abilities even to know that spirits walk with 2 feet. Spirits walk with 2 feet right through a lot of people, everyone. And they walk through people. So when I hear people say, oh, fly through or pass through, they're walking through you. Until next time, thank you for subscribing, clicking the like button, clicking the bell for notifications. A lot of my subscribers are not notified. Thank you for over 9,000 subscribers. The 9,000 are not notified. That's why we have low numbers here. I've been working on this YouTube channel for 9 years straight, which is why I have the 9,000 subscribers. And for one reason or another, not a single YouTube employee has ever said, oh, let's make this guy visible to his own subscribers. They've done the opposite. Algorithmically, I don't think a human did it, but algorithmically, they made it so my own subscribers, you watching, thank you for your support. They made it so most of my subscribers don't get alerted when I upload a new video. They don't see it. So that's why I have low numbers. If it goes down to me getting 1 view, 9,000 subscribers and 1 view, it's going to really take a hit on the morale, and that's the point of the algorithm. The whole point of the algorithm is to make the content creators disinclined to want to even upload. I hope that doesn't happen. Like, leave a comment, subscribe, click that bell for notifications if you don't want that to happen either. I thank you for watching. Be seeing you.